Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1, coming to you from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. We've got the latest of news lined up for you from here at home and across the globe. Let's start off with a look at your top stories for tonight.
Claims that there was no debt-to-equity swap after Hammanta report deal. A group of lawyers to take legal action against notorious companies being allowed to invest in the country. Prime Minister is planning to sign an agreement with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MP Vimal Veeravansa reveals. A child loses his eyesight due to the negligence of a contractor.
Now let's start off tonight's news with a report on the controversial oil refinery project that could pave the way for actions of money laundering in the country.
While there are a number of institutions in the country to vet investors that come into the country, why is it that almost every company that invests in the country is among the most corrupt in the world? Who are the officials that should be held responsible for this?
The central bank is completely responsible for preventing money laundering. It is also the responsibility of the relevant police officers. What has happened today is that all these institutions have been crippled and money laundering is carried out. Even Transparency International has presented facts on this. Be it politicians or state officials, if they are investing money that they stole from the country through corrupt companies with a corrupt past and established under suspicious circumstances, it is a serious crime. The Prevention of Money Laundering Act should be enforced in the country and the relevant parties should be taken to court. Until this is done, this country can never be developed. It is my opinion that although there are laws in place, they should be properly implemented. Even the President should intervene and take a hard stance against this.
Meanwhile, the Lawyers Collective, convening a media briefing today, said they hope to go to the Supreme Court against the matter.
They are stealing money of the public. This government should remember that the crimes committed by the corrupt politicians during the final days of this government, they will be punished under a future government and we will take the lead on that. We would like to inform you that we have teamed up with a number of organizations and examining the information on this matter to take it before the Supreme Court.
Meanwhile, the 5-year anti-corruption action plan that was launched by the President recently has the capacity of drawing the line on these corrupt deals carried out in the guise of bringing investors into the country. The duty of implementing this plan falls on all responsible officials and they must ensure that the plan is not confined to a mere document.
If there are unsuitable investors who are coming into the country, there are separate institutions to examine them specially on issues such as money laundering. This is their duty. There is an intelligence unit at the central bank and they are supposed to maintain a close watch on such corporates. This is not an area that falls under our purview. But when considering the 5-year anti-corruption plan presented, there are many procedures on how to address these issues. I believe that we will be able to reduce corruption as a whole in this country.
Malpractices of the government of good governance was also the subject of discussion in the political arena today. UPFA MP Vimal Veeravansa expressed these views during an event held in Colombo.
You know, when this government came into power, the first thing that they did was create space to make it possible for foreigners to purchase land in this country. After they amended the Foreign Exchange Act, they removed the oversight of the central bank. Now anyone can bring any amount of money they want to or take it away. The central bank does not know. Today this country has become a hub for money laundering. Now they have gazetted the Land Grants Special Provisions Act. The President of the country says that this was not approved in the cabinet. The President had called and asked the Minister of Lands as to how he gazetted it. He said that he has presented his observations on the matter and until a decision on it is reached, this has not been granted approval. Then the Secretary of the Lands Ministry tells the President of the country that the Prime Minister told him to gazette it and that the President's amendments can be added during the committee stage. Why are they trying to draft the gazette through the back door? Ranil Wickremesinghe is trying to reach an agreement with an American corporation named Millennium Challenge Corporation by the end of this month or by the start of the next. There is a provision in that agreement that the foreigners who arrived in the country to work for Millennium Challenge Corporation will be subject only to international law and not Sri Lankan law. It means they are bringing in people to the country who are not governed by the law of the land. That is why they gazetted the Land Grant Special Provisions Act, even if it wasn't approved by the cabinet. We will highlight a few points raised by Wimal Weerawansa due to the importance of this issue. The current government has amended the Foreign Exchange Act, removing the powers of oversight held by the central bank. Through this, Sri Lanka will become a money laundering hub. The Lands Grant Special Provisions Act was gazetted by the order of the Prime Minister, disregarding the recommendations of the President. The Prime Minister is preparing to sign an agreement with an American corporation named Millennium Challenge Corporation.
Now, a report filed in the Sunday Times claims that there was no debt-to-equity swap in the Hambantota deal.
The government has always depicted its Hambantota port deal as a debt-to-equity swap. A debt-to-equity swap is an arrangement whereby the debts of a company are exchanged for stock or equity. In this instance, it would mean that China Merchant Port Holdings Company Limited agreed to take over the debt incurred for the building of the Hambantota port in exchange for shares. The Sunday Times says that this never happened. It adds that the debt was merely transferred out of the books of the SLPA and taken over by the Treasury. Since 2014, the Sri Lanka government has been settling both the loan principal and the interest, in addition to handing over the Hambantota port to Chinese management. Quoting a senior official, the paper says there was no debt-to-equity swap. The Chinese always wanted the loan to be treated as separate and did not want it to be repaid with the lease of the Hambantota port. At the time the transaction took place, Mangalayapa, who was the director at the state-run Board of Investment, spoke extensively about the Hambantota port deal. Mahinda Samarasinghe was the Minister of Ports and Shipping at the time. The former chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, Dr. Parakrama Disanayake, during whose tenure this transaction took place, refused to comment, as he is now a part of a private company in the country. It should be noted that both the negotiations as well as the transaction took place during the tenure of Dr. Parakrama Disanayake. Sri Lanka's media and various good governance advocates have expended effort, time and real money in highlighting state departures from due process. All such concerns have been backed by bona fide acts and figures. Sadly, the government of the day continues to choose to ignore these real concerns and progresses with its wayward ways in the process of ignoring best principles and processes. Those with authority and responsibility indulging in the despicable practice of robbing the public monies must be held accountable and must face the full penalties as envisaged by law. There can be no mitigating circumstance for corruption.
Now, meanwhile, a sum of $146 million, part of the money China Merchant Port Holdings Company Limited paid for the Hambantota port, is lying unused in an account and risks being repatriated by June this year if the Sri Lanka Ports Authority does not float a proposal to spend it. We will have more details about this in the future. Do stay tuned. Moving on in your local news, dairy farmers who have purchased imported dairy heifers in a controversial deal are now facing a situation where they have to lose or give up their property just to make ends meet. The All Ceylon Peasants Federation spoke about the parties that are responsible for this situation at a media briefing today.
This was commenced by Basil Rajapaksa with a company called Velad Rural Exports. In Sri Lanka, a company called Foresight gets involved in this, and this is connected to Sumal Pereira of Access. Sagar Kasumnasekara was the director of this project. She is still the director of the project. If you take a look at this agreement, it is not a good agreement. The government could have stopped the importation of other 15,000 heifers. What did they do instead of stopping this? They used a shortcut and made the payment. The director of the External Resource Department is connected to this. He informs the Ministry Secretary Renuka Ekanayake, who is the wife of Saman Ekanayake, in writing. Saman Ekanayake is the secretary to the Prime Minister. All of them should be hanged. All these people are rogues. Why are they doing this without any fear? Why are they behaving like this? We can clearly state that they are using the powers of the person who brought to put Arjuna Mahendran, the chief suspect, as the governor of the central bank. They are using the powers of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. News First visited a number of farms in the Muskelia, Hatton and Dambul areas where its owners had purchased these imported dairy heifers. One such dairy heifer breathed its last breath while our teams were at the location. At another location, the post-mortem of a cow that had died was being carried out. Against a backdrop where there are plans to import 15,000 more dairy heifers into the country, this was the option of the subject minister in this regard.
25 litres is produced from one heifer in this farm as well. You can call him and ask that. I do not say that in every farm that amount can be obtained, but both of us are not veterinarians. It is them who point out that there is a lack of food consumption with these animals. This is an agreement reached between two countries. Therefore, we have presented facts to the Finance Ministry as well. The government should take a decision on the debt incurred from the project.
Minister, the problem here is the heifers taken by Lakshman Vasanta Perera and Vijit Vijayamani produce better milk than the rest. You can easily obtain 25 to 30 litres from their cattle. But the heifers purchased by businessmen and their dairy farmers can only produce 7 to 8 litres of milk.
That is not the problem. There is a problem with the food given to the animals. The reason that the heifers taken by Lakshman Vasanta Perera produce better milk than the rest is because of the care given to them. This was the manner in which the farmers responded to the statement of the subject minister. This is one of the best minerals in the country. That is what we provide. We also give this. We have given everything that we've been told. But there is no milk. We give soya. We make corn into powder and give it. What else can we do? We give about 60 to 85 kilograms daily. We were unwise to sell them old animals. We have laid carpets. One carpet is 12,600. We could have made use of that money. The dairy farmers purchased these imported cows based on the instructions of the authorities by obtaining loans and by pawning their property. They are now facing hardships and the risk of their property being accumulated by these financial institutions. 8 of my animals died in 3 months. I haven't received even a death certificate claiming the reason behind the death of these animals. My house and all my property have been pawned to the bank. The banks are after us as we have not been able to pay the debt. They are going to auction our lands and get the money. I have spent about 330 million rupees. I am helpless. All my businesses have collapsed and my property are going to be auctioned. It becomes clear that if the government had a genuine and a real need to uplift the dairy industry in the country, they could have done so by protecting the cattle in the country. This claim is further solidified by what this farmer had to say. This is a cow that was here before the imported heifers. It has given birth to 10 calves. We obtained 28 to 30 litres from this cow.
Although slight rain was reported in Kandy, Kotmale and several other areas, the majority of people in the other districts are still suffering at the hands of the prevalent weather conditions. According to the latest statistics from the Disaster Management Center, more than 321,000 people are affected by the drought.
The worst hit areas are Kegol, Puttalam, Kurunagala, Vaunia and Jaffna districts. This is the fate of the Pahata Hewa Hatta, Nugaliyadda and Butavatta villages which were once filled with the water sources. These people have been left helpless without a drop of water for many months.
දැන් මාස 6කින් විතර වැස්සක් ආවේ නැහැ. පිට කිසිම පිළිසරණක් නැහැ ඉතින් ඒ වගේ. අපි නියගෙන් දුක් විඳිනවා කොච්චර හරි. අපිට කන්ට හොයාගන්නවත් නෑ, ගොවිතැනක් කරගන්න වැස්සත් නෑ.
අපිට ඉතින් ආච්චි වතුර තිබුණොත් තමයි ඔය වල වතුර එන්නේ. ඊට දැනෙන කුඹුරු වැඩ කරගන්න පුළුවන්. නැත්නම් ඉතින් අලවල් වතුර හරව ගන්න නෑ.
ඒ ගොවිතැන් කරපේ වගේ මේ වෙනකොට කිසිම ඵල ප්‍රයෝජනයක් ඇත්තෙම නෑ. මේකෙන් ඒ සියලුම විනාශ වෙලා ගියා. ඉතින් අපිට අවුරුදු කියලා කොහෙද කරන්න කියන්නකො. දැන් මේ පේනවනේ අපිට අවුරුද්දක් කියලා ඇත්තටම නෑ.
People are not the only ones suffering because of the drought. Even the animals are feeling these effects. Residents of 7 divisional secretariats in Pallama, Mundalam, Puttalam have to travel for miles every day in search of water.
I am now in the Puttalam district. As you all can see, this is a tank without water. At least 27,000 people and also 7,000 families are being affected because of this bad weather. They are finding it really difficult to survive here in this place. And when we spoke to them, they said that the government is not supporting them enough. Even they are finding it difficult to have their one-day meal. This is the state here in Puttalam.
These people who had pawned all that they owned to finance their farming are now facing untold hardships to make ends meet and are left desolate in the face of this drought. The lives of over 1,000 people in the Ampara district have been crippled by the drought. The water in the area has completely dried up and the search for water is a challenging one even for animals.
Now, in the face of a power crisis, a water crisis, before the dawn of the new year, there are signs of yet another crisis in the transportation sector. News First, Sahani Vikramasinghe reports.
There's exactly 7 days left for the Sinhala and Tamil New Year. And as you can see, there's a lot of people going to their hometowns to celebrate the Sinhala and Tamil New Year with their families. But the trade unions relevant to the transport sector has declared a 48-hour strike from 9th midnight. For the News First team, I'm Sahana Vikramasinghe.
A railway strike is to come into effect from midnight of the 9th of this month. The Railway Operations Coordinating Officers Union and the Railway Supervisory Managers Union made the announcement at a media briefing held today.
A number of main railway trade unions, including railway drivers, operators and station masters, will stage this trade union action. We asked the government to implement the salary grade that was approved for us by the cabinet immediately, but as per the decision of Minister Mangala Samaravira, this has been temporarily halted. If the government fails to award us with the salaries that were approved, we will definitely restart our trade union action. As the first phase of this, we will stage a 48-hour strike starting from midnight on the 9th of this month.
While the railway trade unions are gearing up for a strike action, last week bus trade unions also announced that they too will go on a strike. Against a backdrop where both railway and bus trade unions are attempting to hold the people to ransom, the Joint Federation of Health Professionals announced yet another trade union action.
This strike action will begin at 7 tomorrow morning and will end at 8 am the next day. It will last for 25 hours. About 60,000 from the nursing services sector, supplementary health services and paramedical services are due to engage in the strike action. We have decided to go on strike at hospitals under the central government and all hospitals in the 9 districts of the country.
No matter what the demands of these trade unions are, can the people who simply want to travel to their hometowns for the new year be held to ransom? Can this be justified?
The Sinhala and Tamil New Year, this is the main cultural event in the country. During this period, people use public transport extensively to buy clothes and other items and get ready for the celebrations. It is not unknowingly that these unions are trying to use this. They have made it an opportunity to win their trade union demands. We ask the government to stand firm on this matter. The government is doing a lot to curtail the media and civil organizations. We ask the government to act firmly this time. We ask the people to rally against this. We need the people to rally against these trade unions and this bus union mafia that is in place. We also ask these bus unions and the other trade unions, please don't inconvenience the people at a time like this. If you do this, we will not hesitate to rally the people against this. I think the civil societies should unite and side with the people.
Madda, developing a nation.
A look back at the Gammadda projects in 2019. A water purification project for 350 families in Kalekobuk-Weber. Clean drinking water for 150 students of the Agaliya Mahavidyalaya in Badegama. Water purification project for 35 families in Karandugala Bibila. Water purification project for 300 families in Tugulegama, Mahava, Kurunegala. Project to provide sanitary facilities for 100 students at the Eskadale Tamil Primary School in Nuwara.
Gamadda, developing a nation.
Welcome back to the news. The Auditor General's Department has called for a special report on the daily power outages that began a few weeks ago and the purchase of emergency power.
According to Auditor General Gamini Vijayasinghe, the audit officers at the CEB have been advised to compile the relevant report. He further said the report will be presented to Parliament as soon as it reaches him. Meanwhile, the CEB said yesterday that the duration of the prevailing power outages could continue for longer. However, according to the Minister of Power, Ravi Kanranayaka, the power outages across the country will come to a permanent stop from the 10th of this month. The most important thing as of now is to generate electricity when we don't have electricity. It is a crime to cut power like this with the increased heat these days. It is our responsibility to stop these things from happening now and in the future. If there will be no power outage, that means electricity has to be purchased for a higher amount. If power is purchased for 30 rupees, the government will impose another tax to compensate that. This power crisis can be brought to an end by only purchasing electricity for 30 rupees. If there is no electricity purchasing, power outages are unavoidable. Purchase of electricity for 30 rupees, that is what they want. They did not purchase it for 10 rupees or 15 rupees. They want to purchase it for 30 rupees. That is the commission. The commission alone for a month is about 3,750 million rupees. Not a single leader of this country had a long-term plan to preserve electricity by using natural resources. Their only endeavour was to purchase electricity for higher amounts. We have information that there is a plan to purchase electricity for 30 rupees. This is what the leaders do always. They create the issues for the people in the first place and they try to solve these issues by taking decisions that will put the people in jeopardy. So every single leader this country has had needs to be held accountable for the prevailing power crisis. As a result of there being no long-term plans and proper maintenance, the people are now suffering the repercussions.
More news follows after this short commercial break. Welcome back to the news. The 52nd National Alutsahal Mangala was held today under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena.
The event is celebrated as one of the most venerated ancient agricultural rituals to offer the inaugural harvest of the Maha season to the triple gems of Buddhism. The filling of rice as part of the ritual into a golden bowl commenced with the chief incumbent Thera of the Atamasthana, Venerable Pallegama Srinivasa Thera, taking part in the religious activity. The President, the Prime Minister and the Ministers followed in taking part in the ritual. As part of the tradition, bees' honey is also presented to the sacred Jayasri Mahabodhi. The leader of the Adivasi, Vanilatto, presented the bowl containing the bees' honey to the President. There were benefits through these. The kings sometimes obtain taxes threefold. Before you reprimand the government, remember that even King Parakramabahu imposed VAT. That is how our economy went ahead. We are made to make serious allocations for irrigation. Thank the gods we have received a good yield this time around. The yield this time around is 3 million metric tons. I would like to state that this is the harvesting season with the biggest yield. The people who spoke here say that we have received a yield of millions of metric tons. But if you take a look at the expenditure, the farmers have toiled very hard for this. Therefore, we ask the President to grant a certified price for rice.
A child living adjacent to a leading school in Kurunegala was injured after a rock exploded during construction activities at the school. The child is being treated at the National Eye Hospital in Colombo.
5-year-old Sidula, who is currently at the National Eye Hospital, was playing at his garden in Narambala last evening, but tragedy struck around 5:30 as several particles of explosives almost cost his life. These explosives have been brought down to remove a rock in order to build a protected wall for the school adjacent to his house. Young Sidula's parents accused that the private construction company in charge of the contract, who had left the construction site unattended with the chemicals that caused the explosion. The parents alleged that not even a warning sign was placed at the construction site. When the child was within the limits of my house, this exploded. The child's eyes are burnt. This has been handed over to a certain contractor. The principal should take the responsibility for this. Negligence has caused this child to lose his eyesight. There is uncertainty as to whether his eyesight will be restored. What steps should be taken against those who are responsible?
Another project of the project to construct buildings under the Samata Sevana initiative was held today under the auspices of Minister of Housing and Construction and Cultural Affairs, Sajid Premadasa.
The newly constructed bridge connects the number 5 and number 6 villages in the southern bank of the Lunugam-Vehera area. 39.2 million rupees had been allocated for this project.
The
bridges that are made by us is for poor people who are living a humble life. But bridges were built in the recent past as well. For whom were they built? Those were constructed for the leaders of the country. Not only the leaders but also their wives and children. How can they make bridges for the security of their future? They did not care for the poor people.
UPFA MP Mahinda Nandaluth Gambage expressed these views on the May Day rally of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna.
In line with the May Day rally on the 1st of May, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and the joint opposition has organised a vehicle parade starting from the 26th of April for 5 days. The vehicle parades will converge in Colombo. We will begin this massive movement from Trincomalee.
In more news from Sri Lanka's political arena, MPs representing the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna say that problems in continuing discussions on the alliance between the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and the Port Tour is the reason why SLFP MPs abstained from the budget vote.
A group of Sri Lanka Freedom Party MPs have already joined the United National Party. They are simply killing time in the opposition until the next election. We are saddened by the fact that the Sri Lanka Freedom Party had fallen into the clutches of the UNP because of these few MPs. The way they behaved during the budget vote will be decisive on this matter. We have to clearly ask the MPs from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party as to if they are a part of the camp against the UNP, or do they represent the camp that protects the UNP? We have a feeling that until we can draw a clear line on that issue, these discussions will not be successful.
I am an MP who believes that we do not need peace discussions or to form an alliance with the SLFP. There is no use in doing so. We don't have to fool the villagers of the country and her people. They say they want to defeat the government of Ranil Wickremesinghe, but this is a funny story that we don't understand. When the time comes to defeat Ranil Wickremesinghe, they don't do it. But afterwards, they come out and say they will be starting their campaign tomorrow.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight. To follow details of these stories and more, of course, you can log on to our award-winning website, www.newsfirst.lk. I'm Charlotte Benedict for the Newsfirst team. Take care and good night.